Breaking news in the world of very rich countries. One of the UAE's sovereign wealth funds, Mubadala, actually outspent Saudi's sovereign wealth fund, PIF, in 2024. Mubadala spent over $29 billion in 2024, whereas PIF spent just shy of $20 billion in 2024. So very interested in the dynamics playing out here in the region. I have some thoughts on this, but we are joined by Maria, host of the Encrypted podcast, and you spent a lot of time in the UAE in particular, and you've talked to these wealth funds. What do you make of this?
I think that that's a good thing for UAE because they are really bullish on the things that they are passionate about. And this is where they are focusing their funds on, which is, if you analyze, like 67% bigger than it was the year before. I think that's exciting.
I just have a quick question regarding this. So it's interesting to hear this because I've been thinking about Saudi Arabia a lot recently and how much they're spending and all the projects they're doing. So does this mean they're falling behind or I don't understand what's happening in Saudi Arabia?
I don't think this necessarily means all that much in terms of this is a bad thing for Saudi. I think what this speaks to is two very different approaches because you have two very different countries. I mean, they get compared because they're neighbors and they have in some ways similar ambitions if you squint and look from far enough. But Saudi, I feel like, and the PIF is focused on revolutionizing the Saudi economy and really changing the Saudi economy from one that is so oil dependent into one that can be not just a hub, but like a global leader in many ways. So they're investing in a lot of their internal projects when it comes to their Vision 2030 and everything they're trying to do with that.
من خلال الاستثمار في الثروات الوطنية وحماية الأرض وزراعتها والاحتفال بالتراث والترحيب بالعالم في المملكة.
Whereas the UAE, I think, is more established in what it is. And you've got places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi that are business hubs. And they're really just in a stage of trying to maintain and grow their wealth, not transform what they already have.
So I wouldn't agree in this case about UAE because if we think about that on the country, UAE's Mubadalas and IDEA, which is another big sovereign wealth fund, which is practically the biggest one in the UAE, they are focusing right now and shifting more, investing into emerging tech and more into AI, more into renewable sources of energy, less on real estate this time, and more as well on health tech and healthcare, which I believe from this perspective, it positions UAE as also open towards emerging tech. But we also are open not only towards our country, but also doing this worldwide.
But I think the difference is the UAE is happy with the economy that they've built. Dubai, I know there's the stat that Dubai relies only 1% on oil revenues because it's really a tourism hub. They're years ahead of Saudi in terms of they've already transformed their economy in many ways. And now, yes, from an investment perspective, they're diversifying what they're investing in to again, maintain and grow the wealth of the money they have and the capital they have. Whereas Saudi is still very much in the process of trying to invest in that transformation on the ground within the country.
There is a couple of reasons why Saudi wants to invest more into their own country. Because first and foremost, they want to attract more people and focus more on tourism in their country first. They're focusing more on sports. They're definitely trying, from my perspective, followed the UAE suit in being more open towards decentralized finance as well, towards Web3 gaming. But I also believe this is because of their plans to have the big expo in 2030, to have some of the biggest events that will be happening in Saudi.
The World Cup?
Yes, World Cup, of course. But even if you want to invest, let's say, if you want to get our investments, you have to reinvest back into Saudi. So one of the bright examples, I believe, is BlackRock has still secured $5 billion from Saudi. But in this case, it's because they have opened an office as well in Riyadh. On the contrary, I would say UAE's approach, when we analyze what is happening with Mubadala, they're also more open towards Asia, towards the US, Europe, whatever works. But obviously, one of the things that I'm passionate about and interested is obviously investing in AI, because they even have created MGX, a new fund that has 100 billion assets under management, and it will be specifically focused on investing into AI, first of all, data centers, but also focusing on semiconductors, focusing on Obviously, this is one of the very important things. Also focusing on AI infrastructure, all the other stuff, software, robotics. And one of the funniest things, I believe, is that Mubadala in the future, right now in 2025, they will be using AI as an advisor where to invest next.
Can
you imagine? Yeah.
Because so speaking of that, that's what I was going to ask you right now, is that as an investor, someone who's building a startup in the region, should I just forget about going to Saudi right now and just focus on going to Abu Dhabi, for example?
Well, I would say like this. It depends what exactly you're looking for. Because again, if you're interested in Web3 gaming, obviously, I think Saudi is more for you. As a part of the Blockchain Center, I can tell you a lot of things will be happening in terms of Web3 gaming in the UAE as well. So obviously, I'm passionate about UAE. But also, one of the things that I find really, really, really exciting is that how it will be developing, not only in terms of Web3 gaming, but also, again, how the intersections of AI and blockchain, etc., will be developed and how people can invest into that.
One thing that I think is so interesting is you have Mubadala has $330 billion asset under management, but their average annual returns, at least as of the date we have it, which is not for 2024, but for the last 5 years, were 10.3% on average per year, which is really good when you're talking about deploying that much money. Like, it is very hard to effectively deploy that much money. And so, I think about these are maybe interesting. These sovereign wealth funds are interesting to look at, even as an individual, to just say, where are they putting capital? The way that I'm going to invest. If you're an investor with $20,000 sitting on your couch, it's very different than how you're going to spend money if you have $300 billion at your fingertips. And in some ways, there's not that much comparison. But I do think it's interesting from a trend perspective to say, where are they looking? What are they going to do next? And one thing is you have the head of Mubadala saying back in December of 2024 that he feels they're underinvested in Asia, and specifically saying you have to be looking at India and you have to be looking at Southeast Asia as places for better returns moving forward.
So I think it's in terms of when we talked about Asia, it's a very good point. What's interesting, I found this really interesting that they will be using Mubadala. In case of Mubadala, they will be using AI because at some point you can say that AI it's emotionless. So it will be only based on logics. It will advise you where to invest next, where it sees the trend growing. And at some point, I think it's an interesting thing to follow as well, because whenever we know what exactly they're investing in, you as an angel investor, you can invest it in as well. One of the interesting things is, again, with AI, it's actually growing heavily. And I can say the same thing is happening in Dubai. The same thing is happening in Abu Dhabi. I believe with all of the, as I mentioned, data centers, focusing on connectivity, investing into AI, let's say AI infrastructure, data centers, connectivity, semiconductors, robotics, software, all of these things will matter.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys actually about this. So what do you think is the big takeaway from all of this? Does this mean that AI is essentially expensive? A lot of money is being spent on AI? Or does this mean that governments are actually believing so much in AI that they want to put so much money into it?
I would say it's not only the only focus on AI, but emerging tech in general, plus renewable sources of energy. We have to focus on sustainable sources of energy. We have to focus, if we want to live long, healthy life, we have to focus on healthcare and health tech specifically, and how AI and other technologies such as blockchain as well, they can help with that. So all of these things combined is we can see that there's a shift where exactly the money flows. It's not anymore about only real estate, oil and gas. It's more about healthcare, health tech, AI, emerging tech in general, and everything connected with that.
In the US, there's this question of, are we in an AI valuation bubble? Are we in an AI bubble? So much money is poured into AI. SoftBank and Masterson announcing they're spending $100 billion on AI-related projects in the United States. And one thing I've heard from very smart people who are even arguing maybe we're not in an AI valuation bubble yet, or at least not maybe a semiconductor bubble, is the sovereign wealth funds aren't really in it yet. And just wait until basically the sovereign wealth funds get into this game. So I think it will be interesting to see how, if there is just a continued and real upswing in AI-related investments, especially into the US by these sovereign wealth funds, what does that do to these valuations?
Also, a question just in my mind right now when you guys are talking, what does this mean for like the oil industry and the real estate industry? Does this mean that slowly but surely investments there are gonna start becoming like problematic, or you don't see that happening?
It's not about, I think, problematic, but obviously there is already a shift in focus, which means that there will be less capital for this year at least deployed in obviously in oil and gas and real estate. But it doesn't mean that this focus cannot be changed over the years.
I would separate real estate from oil. I would say real estate is cyclical. Different markets are hot at different times, but real estate will always be something that we need.
That will be
Oil, I think
relevant.
what's interesting with oil is it's countries looking ahead and looking at a future in which we are much less oil dependent and we need much less oil. And that becomes something that's just a lot less lucrative.
Dubai is a perfect example of how they completely do not rely on oil at all. And now they're focusing a lot on the digital creator economy.
Dubai has never been the oil city, let's be frank.
Yeah, true.
The oil city is Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
Dubai has always been a business capital, has always been a tourism capital. That's why if you think about that, the biggest wealth funds, obviously, sovereign wealth funds in Abu Dhabi, and their focus might be a bit different. But in terms of, again, of emerging tech, emerging markets, this is the focus when we're talking about the UAE in general.
All right. Well, we will have to see how it all plays out. Maria, thank you as always for joining us.
Thank you.
Eisa, thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.